Okay, good evening, everyone. It's good to be with you all. Those of you on the internet and all the hundreds of you who are here with me, you guys have enough room over there. Okay, good. Just make sure everyone is settled in here. The place is packed. I'm going to have to turn on the air conditioner, especially because Bezalel's not here, so he's not going to get cold. So we can turn on the air conditioner and ensure that all the hundreds of people who are here are comfortable and ready to learn. So we have our work cut out for us this evening. We are going to be discussing how to clean your house in less than a day. As I mentioned to Betty, I will not be cleaning your house in less than a day. But of course, if you do need help, I'm more than happy to. For the hundreds of you who are here, I'm happy to come and help if I can. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or need any support, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, whatever. Did I say emotional twice? Doesn't matter. It's been a long day. We're going to talk about, because I think, unfortunately, and first off, it's crazy that we are here already a month before, not even less than a month before Pesach, right? Purim marks a month before Pesach. And we're here, we're ready, we're already getting to start, to think about how to kosher our homes. Maybe some people have already started to do it. And so I think often, there's all these memes and all of these, like fears and neuroses and all the things that Pesach cleaning brings up for you. And we have lots of people struggle with it. It doesn't need to be, right? It doesn't need to be such a, such a stressful situation. And I'd love to just kind of give a couple of tips and go over some of the ways in which we can kosher our homes, what needs to be koshered, what needs to be cleaned, you can leave alone, et cetera, et cetera. And again, if you have any questions, then please feel free to, call out and ask away. Okay, I'm going to be sharing my screen with you guys. Hello. Welcome. It's good to see you. No, as people, I told them here that there's hundreds of people here. So there's hundreds of people here, all sitting here. So Kim's going to join me here. And Kim and I are going to learn together. I'm going to forget about you guys. It's good. I didn't want to talk to you anyway. So no, we're not doing this. Here we go. I'm going to share my screen with all of you, but Kim, you can take one of those. And the rest of you will just pass these out here if you want. It might take about 25 minutes to pass it out amongst the hundreds of people here. So you guys just bear with us for a moment. Beautiful. Okay, cool. So I'm going to share my screen with you. This is a document that I have shared in the past. And it is, as it says, as promised, how to do your Pesach cleaning cheerfully in less than one day. Okay, this is a document by Rav Aviner, who's a well-known rabbi in the Dati Leumi community. The Dati Leumi, the modern Orthodox community, national religious community in Israel. And I don't agree with everything that he's written here, and I will point out where I disagree. But generally speaking, I think the approach is fantastic. Okay, now, so let's just without further ado, let's get into it. So I'm not just going to read this because you guys all can. For those of you at home, however, what I'll be doing is I will send these out. I'll send these resources out, and so that people you've got copies of them, digital copies of them, so that you're able to make your way through it on your own. And so let's take a look at it. So the last 2 years, if I remember correctly, certainly 2 years ago, but possibly even last year, people did not have the ability to go away for Pesach. Is that correct? Or last year, maybe we did.
Last year, we had 17 people for second Seder.
We could have people, but you couldn't. Could you travel interstate? Sure. I don't even remember. Who knows? It's all been a big blur. I don't remember. But certainly 2 years ago, you couldn't. Last year, we were limited, obviously, right? We couldn't leave Australia. That was for sure, right? So now, thank God, we can. I know a lot of people who are going to Israel over Pesach. I don't know if there'll be anybody left here inside. There you go. Kim and I will hang out once again. It'll just be me and Kim again. Maybe Joel will be there too. Yeah, hopefully. Okay. So what do you do though? What if you need to go away for Pesach, or if you want to go away for Pesach, and you're not going to be at home throughout the entire holiday? What does he say? He says you can be lenient and not clean for Pesach, right? Just sell the house, right? There's a great market right now. Just sell the house. It's a buyer's market or a seller's market. We want it to be a seller's market. It's a seller's market. And you just sell the house, okay? You don't need to clean, you don't need to do all that stuff. That's in terms of your own home. You do, as we'll see in a moment, you do need to check where you go. If it's your hotel room in Nusa or I don't know, somebody's house in Israel, please God, everyone should go to Israel and not Nusa. You can go to Nusa, don't worry. What do you do with bedikat chametz, right? So that's what we'll talk about in a moment. But he says here, if someone is staying in your house, then yeah, you do need to clean the rooms, right? And so you should clean the house anyway. You should probably clean the house anyway if somebody's staying there. And if there's rooms that aren't going to be used, just close them off as he says, okay? How realistic that is up to everybody's particular situation. But the bottom line, if you're not going to be in your home and nobody's going to be in there, just lock and key, right? And all good. In terms of bedikat chametz, as he says here, if you arrive at your Pesach destination by the 14th of Nisan, then yes, you should check there, perform the search there. However, if you arrive on the 14th, you should clean well and check a small room. And also, let's say you get there on Erev Pesach. I wouldn't recommend this. If you're planning, right, and you're going somewhere, now, not always can you do such a thing. Although this year, is it Motzi Shabbos this year? Is it Saturday night? It's Pesach? Or it's Friday night. It's Friday night. Okay. Anyway, you should try, generally speaking, to get where you need to get at least on Thursday, so that you can do the bedikat chametz at night. If you're going to someone's home, if you're staying by family and it's their home, they have a responsibility to do it. It's their home. Obviously, if you're going to someone's home, it's not religious. That's probably not ideal because you don't necessarily know what they're going to be, what sort of checking they're going to be doing, but obviously everybody in their own circumstances. Does anybody have any questions on that before? I'm going to go pretty quickly, and then you can go back and listen to the recording and slow it down, and I will talk like this, and then you'll be able to make more sense of it. But if there's anything that's unclear, please feel free to shout out. And all of you guys here, all good? Okay, beautiful. We'll keep rolling. So what about a chametz that is less than a kazayit? So a kazayit is an olive bulk. What an olive bulk's amount is a matter of great debate within halacha. It's a fascinating one as well. If anybody's interested into how big is an olive, when we say an olive, how big is a halachic olive? You can look into the writings of Rabbi Natan Slifkin. We have some of his books here, because somehow in the books of halacha, the olive, the low, not lowly, olives aren't lowly, but they're quite small. They somehow became the size of a watermelon. I don't know how that happened. Well, it's not really a watermelon. Let's say a plum. And it's a fascinating thing that there are some rabbis who say that when we talk about an olive bulk, which is important because in terms of the amount of matzah that you have to eat and all that sort of stuff, kazayit is important. But it's changed with time, and we're not going to get into that debate at this moment. But what it says here is that chametz, which is less than a kazayit, you can't eat it, right? But it's not included in the Torah prohibition of bal yera'eh and bal yematzeh. If you've been following my fascinating divrei halacha that I send out by WhatsApp every morning on the community chat group, you will have heard me discuss these ideas of bal yera'eh and bal yematzeh, which literally means a person's not allowed to see nor is allowed to find chametz in your abode on Pesach. Okay, so if it's less than a kazayit, you haven't violated that. But nonetheless, you still want to get rid of it. So even if it's less than a kazayit, you can't eat it, but not a violation of the prohibition of having it in your property. Here he mentions that a kazayit is 27 cubic centimeters, 3 centimeters square, okay, or a little over an inch square. We're not going to get into that at this moment. So he says here, this is what we've been learning actually at night in the Mishnayot that we've been learning between Mincha and Mariv. Usually rooms in which children are allowed to bring sandwiches or cookies are likely to contain such big pieces of chametz. A room which people do not walk around with food does not need to be cleaned at all. Okay, that's an important one, especially for people with older children or with people who don't have children in the home. Then if there's a room that you do not bring chametz into, if it's the laundry room, or I don't know, some people are very, very strict about not bringing food into bedrooms or something like that, it does not need to be checked. You don't need to check it. Okay, what's important, and this he gets to this at the end, and this is an important point, is that cleaning for Pesach is not spring cleaning, and it's certainly not spring cleaning in Australia, right? Here it's autumn cleaning, but again, it's this sort of mindset. We're like, oh, I gotta now tear the whole house and rip up the carpets and steam clean the. No, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that, right? You have to check for chametz. You're looking for chametz. If you want to, if you have the ability to, if you've got the time to, then hey, go for it. But if you don't, then don't. Okay, and if you come back to me and say, Rabbi, you told me that I was gonna, can clean my house in less than a day, but you're ripping up the carpets, then it's on you. It's not on me. Okay, I told you specifically not to rip up the carpets. If there's a room in which people do not bring food, you don't need to check there. Obviously, if you've got little toddlers, even if it's a room that you're not supposed to bring food in, you can't control that, and so you check there. But if it's not, so great. If you got just adults in the home or responsible people, then all good. Okay. He says here just at the end, if you do not find them, or if you don't find these little pieces, you will not need to bother much to hunt them down, because you can rely on the bitul chametz, right, which is the nullification of chametz. Okay. Questions, thoughts, answers? Great. Okay. Bedikat chametz, we're just going to keep rolling along, right? Bedikat chametz, as I mentioned earlier, you only have to check in an area in which there is going to be chametz. Okay, he says here, it is nearly impossible for chametz, which is an inch square, to be hidden inside a book, right? If there's a chance that the book has chametz in it, then it must be thoroughly checked. I know people who before Pesach, they take the books off the thing, they and then they close it. I halavai that everyone's using all their books that often, but you don't have to do that if we're talking about a bencher, right, in which there might be some food on it, or I don't know, I'm not sure what the situation, or children's books or something like that, where maybe there's more of a likelihood of chametz being on it. Fine, but you still don't it's unlikely that you're going to have a kazayit, even against the smallest measurement of what a kazayit is. It's unlikely you're gonna have a cheese sandwich stuck between. Speaking of which, when I was in high school, I remember one kid, as a prank, put a cheese sandwich in somebody's math book, and it was left there over the summer. And when we came back after the summer, it was just the worst smell ever. But generally speaking, if there is a cheese sandwich inside a book, you will notice it, and it's unlikely that you'll miss that. So you don't need to check the books before Pesach. Okay? Yeah? All good? Right? He says here, whatever, everyone knows the kids' habits. Look here and there regarding crumbs in the corners of the house, right? A crumb is not a kazayit, and they are inedible to a dog, right? Now, my dog will try to eat whatever he can eat, but if it's a kazayit, it's not worth his time. Okay, he's waiting for the big chunks, and there's that. I just want to mention a point that actually Bezalel raised at Minyan last night, which is, I don't know, by show of hands out here, how many people hide 10 pieces or hide pieces of chametz around the house. So thank you, Kim, and all the rest of you as well. And I know Betty and Bezalel do. And so the question is, do we have to do that? Right? Does one have to do it? And the answer is no. The answer is no. You don't have to do it. Can you do it? Yes. Should you do it? For sure, right? It's a great practice. We do it every year. It's a lot of fun with the kids. As I mentioned last night, make sure that if you are doing it, make sure to write down where you put them, because we've had issues in the past where I have to stay up till very late hours looking for that one piece that I can't find where it is, or I forgot where I hid it. There are some people say the reason why you do that is because you don't want to make a bracha levatala, a blessing in vain. You're making a bracha for checking for chametz, and then you don't find any. But that's not really true. That's not really accurate, because the bracha is on checking for chametz. It's not on finding chametz. It's on checking for chametz. And if you've done a great job and there's no chametz in your home, great. There are also Kabbalistic, more spiritual reasons about taking 10 specifically, and putting them around the house and doing it in that way. It's a great custom. It's a very good thing to do, but it's not necessary. Okay. Questions, thoughts? How are we going over there? Okay. All good? I'm going to make a bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh b'dvaro. All right, let's keep rolling. So in terms of educating children, he just mentioned, you can read this later, but it's really important, as he says here, to get kids involved, right? From a very young age, for those of you who that's relevant for, from a very young age, get them involved so that they are taking part in the important mitzvah. He asks a question here, and I just want to mention here that Rav Aviner, he's written this more for a kind of a more religious kind of Israeli community. So you'll see some of that, those cultural leanings within that. So the question is here, does a husband have to help his wife? Answer, a husband does not have to help his wife, nor does a wife have to help her husband. Rather, the two of them have to clean together, since this is a shared home and is a shared life as well. Now, if that's not obvious for anybody, then I don't know. That's challenging, but right, that should be understood that this is everybody's responsibility. There's certain things, like at least in our home, there's certain things my wife does, certain things that I do, right? I do the kind of like the elbow things that require a bit of elbow grease, and and my wife's really quick. I mean, she's like super quick and super on top of things. So she does the all the other stuff, and we work it out together. Children's clothing. So he says here, is it, there is often food that's found inside children's clothing, but, do you have to check everything? I have found in the past, like crumbs inside, coats and that sort of stuff. I would check coats, that's for sure. Pockets, I don't know if you want to, run them. It says here, run it through the laundry, pull out the pockets. You should do that anyway before you do the laundry. Pull out the pockets, but jackets should be checked. Backpacks, knapsacks, right? That's like, that's the big thing, right? Because there's like lunches from before COVID that are still in those backpacks. You got to go. You guys don't call them backpacks. What do you call them? Knapsacks, school bags, backpack. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. Okay, toys. Again, we're just gonna fly through it, but please stop me if you have questions. Toys must also be checked, right? So, especially again, if you're talking about toddlers under the age of 3, right? There's a mess. They get things messy, so you gotta check them. He says you might put some of them away, or buy new toys as a present for the holiday. Okay, fine, everyone to their own. I would say that's a great job if you have young kids and you got older kids as well. That's a great job for older kids to do, that they can kind of like take it out and take a look and see and go through things for those for whom that is relevant. But toys, you could have chametz there. You'd be surprised or not that surprised. Okay. Let's start to get into some of the more complex things, bathroom cabinets. And this is an issue that we deal with every single year. And so he says here, right, when you're talking about different, ointments or different medicines, we'll talk about medicine a bit later, shampoos, right? It says they might contain chametz, such as wheat germ oil and alcohol derived from wheat. Okay, now, that is true. Right? There's a lot of things that have oatmeal in them or wheat germ or whatever it is, and that is chametz. The question is, so here he says, what a waste, to clean it, get rid of it, and sell it or whatever it is. Okay, as a kid, that's what we did, right? As a kid, we would take, like, if there was, I don't know, like some things have oat in them, right? was it Neutrogena? What's the one that has oat in it?
Scrums with oatmeal.
Yeah, a lot. Oatmeal is really good for the skin, especially people who have like psoriasis, that sort of stuff. So it's in a lot of things. The question is this the sort of thing that a dog would eat, right? You might be familiar with the idea that for something to be considered chametz, it needs to be ra'ui la'achilat kelev. It needs to be fitting for the consumption of a dog. A dog is not going to eat your shampoo, right? Should you use it on Pesach? I think if you can avoid it, great. Right? I think if you can avoid using it. With that being said, if you are a person who has, or you know someone who has some sort of skin condition, and this particular product is the one that either, prevents an an outburst. That's not what I'm looking for. An outbreak or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? Or a breakout. Anyway. Anybody else have any suggestions here? If that's the case, or if it is actively helps with the skin, and so you can use it, right? You're not going to eat it. It's not being consumed. And if you have questions about that, then please feel free to reach out to me privately or now if you wish. But again, if it's some sort of cosmetic or out, the same thing goes with. Perfume, right? A lot of perfume and cologne does have an alcohol that is made out of it's derived from wheat. If you know that and you want to not use it, great. I remember my father always saying, is it something that if you had someone who was addicted to alcohol in a really dire straits, would they drink it? Right. And there are some people who drink some really awful things. Dog would never do it. Dog's not stupid enough to, dogs are very smart. They would never drink that stuff. But unfortunately, a lot of human beings in their moment of despair, they would. Cologne, probably not. I don't think anybody would be drinking cologne. But with that being said, there are many who are strict who put away their colognes unless they're sure that it doesn't have, alcohol that's derived from wheat. Okay. Yeah, all good? Any questions? Cool. Couches. Got to check the couches, look inside, obviously, this is not just for kids, right? We all know, like everybody, you can lose stuff in between depending upon what couch you have. Check underneath the couches, all good. He mentions here, books, I've already spoken about books. You don't need to check books. He says you should clean them, but I don't know. It doesn't seem to me that you're going to have any crumbs or large enough crumbs for it to be problematic. Okay. Dining room also. You don't have to clean everything, just the place where people eat, the chairs and the table, right? You don't, and here's what's important. I know everybody knows this. You've done this you don't need to kosher your table, right? You don't need to pour boiling water over it. You can just clean it and cover it. Clean it and cover it, right? He does say here there are two options: koshering with boiling water. If it's your, several $1,000, wooden dining room table, please do not pour boiling hot water on your table. You can just cover it with, with plastics and tablecloths. I might be jumping out. We might deal with this later on, but tablecloths. Here's my question to all of you. Let's make this interactive. Let's see how we go. Who thinks? Who thinks that we should that you need to get special Pesach tablecloths?
I have special Pesach linen.
I'm sure you do.
The whole works.
I'm sure you do, but do you need to?
In my point of view, yes.
Okay, that's it. That's the end of it. Betty has said so. While many people do, myself included, and it's a nice thing to do, and I like there's something about like switching over completely. Your home is switched over, and you're using those weird cups and all that. I don't know, maybe like as we grew up with weird Pesach cups, right? Like that's the situation that it is, and you have special tablecloths and you have special linen. That's great, but you don't need to. What do you have to do? Put it in the wash. Clean it in the wash, right? If there is chametz that's still in it, it's going to be cleaned out. If you've got a good machine that works, it's going to be cleaned out. And if not, whatever's left there is not going to be edible, right? It's not going to, and you got bigger issues. You've got a ruined tablecloth. But the bottom line is you don't really need them, okay? Is it a good thing to do? Yeah, sure, right? We live at a time which people do have all these things and the like. Questions, comments? Okay, I'm going to keep going here. Let's do this. Great. All right. High chair. Okay, a high chair. Again, some people this might not be relevant for, but I know that there will be people, hundreds and hundreds of people, listening to this afterwards. So just to make sure, in terms of a high chair, it says if it's plastic, it can be immersed in a tub with boiling hot water and cleaning agents. I wrote here, get a different tray. Like for example, back in my day, although we still have a baby who uses somewhat of a high chair, but the IKEA one is very, very popular, right? And it's very very cheap and very easy, and it's incredible. And the IKEA one, you can actually get multiple trays, right? You can get a second tray, and they're like, I don't know, like $11, right? So it's like that's if you have the IKEA one. If you have one that's a little bit more complicated and you can't do it, so you can clean it, and he says here you can immerse it in boiling water if you can. If it's going to damage it, then don't. But use cleaning agents. The cleaning agents clean it well. He says it's unnecessary to take the chair apart because whatever in the cracks and holes is inedible to a dog. Even though, yes, it is highly likely that every crack and crevice underneath the thing will have some smushed muffin inside it. That's just kids are incredible. But you don't need to go through that, right? You don't need to take the whole thing apart. Okay, all good. Kitchen. He says because the kitchen is that's where the chametz is, right? It needs to be thoroughly cleaned and not one crumb of chametz left. And this is an important point in terms of chametz, okay? Even though I've been very, very lenient so far, I've been seeing all these things, don't do this, you don't need to do this, don't need to do that, it's all good, right? And those are true. I'm not just making those things up. But what's different about chametz is that chametz is if it's edible, okay? So not what we're talking about if it's smushed inside something and a dog wouldn't eat it, but if it's an edible piece of chametz, if it falls into a mixture, even if there's thousands of times of kosher Pesach material against that little piece, the whole thing is no longer kosher, right? Chametz, we say chametz afilu be'elef lo batel. Chametz, even in 1,000 parts to the one, it's not batel. Whereas, for example, milk in meat is batel b'shishim, right? Is nullified in 60. Other things, as we'll talk about later on tonight, like kitniot, are batel barov. They're nullified in the majority. So if you have 1 to 2, right? Chametz is very, very strict, and even 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 1,000,000, it's a problem. Okay, so you need to clean it. Obviously, we're talking about a piece that's not edible. That's not an issue. But if it's a piece that is edible and you know that it's there, you got to clean it. So kitchens, that is where the majority of our time is obviously going to be spent. This first one, is the question that I get most of the time by people, certainly before Pesach, and also just if they're moving into a new apartment or a new home. And that is, can you kasher a dishwasher? Rav Aviner says it is preferable not to kasher a dishwasher. He says here, you can do the dishes by hand as in previous generations. It is also possible to use disposable dishes. I want to make a point on the disposable dishes. It's more of an issue in Israel than it is here, but it's a big cultural issue, environmental issue. The amount of plastics that we Jews use, and especially that we use on Pesach. Okay, we're guilty of it too, right? Because sometimes it's like, it's just like easier, right? Whatever. But I think it's something we need to be mindful of, right? We have to understand what our footprint is upon this very fragile earth at this moment, and if you can get, even if you get, like, you go to IKEA and get really cheap but good quality plates and stuff like they're there, right? It's there. You can get like an entire kitchen for less than $100, right? You build things up year to year. So that's much better, and I think, than constantly using disposable dishes. Rav Aviner says it's preferable not to kasher a dishwasher. You should be aware, there are opinions that say that it is possible. It is more difficult when you're talking about those sorts of trays that are kind of like dipped in that it's like a rubber sort of plastic. It's like they're dipped inside it, so it's a metal tray or a metal rack, and then the rack is dipped. I forget what the material actually is. Maybe somebody knows. That is more problematic. Many dishwashers today, the racks are either metal, but mainly they're plastic. If you can clean it out well and you have to go inside the thing and normally that little filter and make sure that's cleaned out well, and you're always using dishwasher detergent, which everybody does. There are opinions that say that it is possible to kosher dishwasher. Growing up, we did not. Okay, growing up, we did not. My father did not rely upon those things, but there are opinions that say that you can. Okay, so if anybody's interested in that, I'm happy to give more guidance on that. But know that there are opinions who say you can, and opinions who say that one cannot, and that in the dishwashers that we use today, with the dishwasher detergent, all the food is considered, completely pagum. It's completely destroyed, and as such, it would be possible to do it. Okay. Yeah. Questions on that? Okay.
Hello, Rabbi.
Hello.
Just to go back to the cleaning of the kitchen.
Yeah.
A few years ago, I have bought myself a pressure steamer.
Yeah.
It's all right. And the reason I'm so happy with it, because if you put your finger in front of that steamer, when it's working, you'll burn your finger. So in other words, to clean up the benches and the tables, if you have to kosher them, it makes life so much easier.
Yeah.
So I recommend, if people can go to Bunnings, and I don't know how much they are today, but they won't be too expensive, but they'll make the life much, much easier.
Beautiful. You don't have to go to Bunnings. You can just go to the Goldbergs. It's great. Yeah, good. We're going to get to...
Anytime.
We're going to get to benchtop soon, but that's a great point, right? And that we've got these kind of technological whatever that allows us to do it in a safe and more efficient way, as opposed to like burning our feet with the normal stuff. So yes, great point.
It's very good on the stove and on your oven once it's cleaned.
Okay, oven we'll talk about later, right? Oven we'll talk about in terms of koshering it. I'm not sure it would work for koshering an oven.
No, after you've koshered it.
Okay, just to clean it.
Just to give it a good steam to make sure there's nothing
right, you guys
left
are from.
behind.
You guys are from. All right, cool.
Yeah, we're from New Zealand.
Okay, good. All right. So let's go one by one here. We're going to get to bench tops in just a moment here. An oven, okay? If you don't have, here is what he says. I don't agree with this. He says, if you do not have a self-cleaning oven, it's best not to kosher it. I don't agree. He says, seal the oven and buy baked goods or buy a Wonder Pot, which allows you to bake on a stove. You can kosher an oven, even a non-self-cleaning oven. It takes a bit of work, okay? There are these materials that you can get at Kohl's. I recommend to get the ones that are not caustic and not bad for the environment, not bad for you, and they're still really effective. I think something called monkey grease, which is a pretty good product. And you got to clean the thing, right? And that's for those of you who are here, the hundreds of you who are here, if you want me to come and scrub your oven, I'm happy to. There's also Chabadniks who've got a bit of a business who do that sort of thing. And there's also, other cleaning agencies that do that. If you have a self-cleaning oven, you just clean it, do the best that you can, get rid of whatever mamashut, whatever material that there is within the oven, and then you put it on high for about 45 minutes and you're good to go. Okay, it's work. That is work. That's where, for me, that spends the majority of the time, like really just kind of getting in there. It's work, but it's worth it. What are you going to do? You're not going to cook in an oven for a week. It's crazy. Okay. A stove. Okay, a stove depends upon what stove you have. Now, I just want to make a point here, which might be obvious to many of you already. All of this material I'll give out, but also the Kosher Australia booklet that they give out every year that you must have, right? Because that tells you what's kosher, what's not kosher, all that sort of stuff for Pesach. Also gives you guidance in terms of all of these different things. Okay, so and you can call them, you can certainly call me, and we can kind of go through these things together. In terms of the stove, the grate, again, yeah, you clean it, and it says here, and cover with as much aluminum foil as possible. Okay, he says here the best thing is to use special Pesach burners. I don't know if everybody has the ability to get special Pesach burners, but if you're cleaning it well, if you want to cover with aluminum foil, great. But if you're going to kosher it properly, and I'll talk about that in a moment, then it's okay, right? You could cover them. I cover them with aluminum foil, but you don't necessarily need to. If the koshering is working, then that's going to get rid of whatever chametz is within that. It says here burners. You don't need to clean the burners where the flame's actually coming out, right? And you don't have to go through and take the whole thing apart. I still do. I don't know why, but I take it apart and I remove because but everything's burned up. Nothing's edible there. It is not an issue there. A glass stove top. There's a lot of new technology out there, and I'll just mention koshering a glass stovetop is possible. It is possible to kosher a glass stovetop. Here, what I've brought here from the Star K is that it's in terms of the actual place, because here's the issue, right? Where there's the burner, you can kosher that, right? The idea is that if you've been cooking on a particular heat with that burner, all you have to do in order to kosher it is clean it and then bring it up to that heat for 20 to 45 minutes, depending upon the opinion. So the actual area, especially if we're talking about a glass stove, the actual area that you put the pot there, that's kosher. The issue that he mentions is what's around it, where you do put your pots, right? You slide your pots off to the cooler areas or whatever it is. You definitely put stuff there, but you can't heat that up, right? You definitely don't take a blowtorch to it, and pouring hot water won't do anything to it. It'll probably ruin it, and it won't kosher because you need to bring it up to the heat that it normally works at. And so that's the issue. What you could do, and this people pointed out to me, is that there are these mats that you can buy at Kohl's or any other barbecue store that can deal with a tremendous amount of heat that you can put there, and they're not going to burn, they're not going to catch on fire. I don't know, it's like magic. And you can put them in those areas that if you want to, because you shouldn't be putting your Pesach pot on that area of the stove that you can't really kosher, and that you do all the time put very hot things onto, right? Because you move the pasta pot from one thing to another. And so, that's one way that people deal with it. Yeah, makes sense? All good at home? Sweet, we'll take it. All right. Okay, yeah, knobs, it needs to be cleaned. You don't need to kosher the knobs. All right, let's take a look here. Refrigerator. Refrigerator does not need to be koshered, right? That's an important thing. It just needs to be cleaned. It should be cleaned out. Make sure that it's a good thing to clean our refrigerator out every once in a while. It needs to be cleaned out. Here he speaks about defrosting freezers. I don't know, does anybody still have a freezer that still needs to be defrosted from time to time? Probably not. But if you do, then okay. But for most people, it's just something that you clean out, go through it, find those old bagels there that have been sitting there from who knows when, and clean it out. Okay. And also, again, he says here, like most modern refrigerators are made in such a way where there's, it's easy to clean. There's not so many, places where things can get stuck into. He mentions here food pantry. He says, do not clean. Okay, we clean it, it'll still, I think you can still clean it within your day of work. Here's the question, does one need to put something down on top of the pantry, right? You clean out the pantry, do you need to put something down, piece of paper, piece of whatever, foil underneath it? No, you don't need to. If it's cleaned out and you know that you cleaned it and there's no chametz around there, you don't actually have to put something down there, right? Because concern that, I don't know, maybe one time you had, a box of Frosted Flakes there. And no, but many people do anyway. And if that's something that is just part of your practice, then fantastic, go for it. Okay. right? It says dishes, shelves, and drawers that will not be used, seal it up, put it away, and get rid of it. But it's included within the sealing, right? It's in the selling of chametz. Just get rid of it, put it out of sight, make sure that it's not being used. Microwave. Microwave can be kosher, just like a microwave can be kosher to go from milchik to fleishik, and vice versa. So too, a microwave can be koshered for. To be used on Pesach. And we'll mention here an important point, and this is pointed every year, and it's something to be aware of. How do you kosher anything? In order to kosher anything, it needs to not be used for 24 hours, okay? That's an important point. The reason why it needs to wait for 24 hours is that there's a concept within halacha, within kashrut, called notein tam lifgam, that let's say there's food particles, how this exactly works, we don't fully understand, but let's say there's food particles that are embedded within the walls of a pot, okay? So again, we know that the food particles don't really get in there, but they're somehow within that part, within the pot. So long as it's within 24 hours, those food particles are there, and they may impart taste within, into the food that you're cooking. But if that pot has not been used in 24 hours, the idea is that the food there actually becomes bad tasting. It's called pagum. It's messed up. And so even if it does still give over taste, it does not give over a good taste. And that's why if anybody asks me a halachic question about, I don't know, like the teenage son who put the milchik thing and the fleishik, that's the question we get all the time. It's always the teenage sons, right? Always doing this, they're putting the wrong thing, not always. But, what's the first question? When was the last time you used it, right? If the last time you used that pot was, in 2018, then don't worry about it. If the last time you used it was last Tuesday, don't worry about it. But if you had just cooked with it earlier that day, like getting ready for Shabbos, that's more likely. You used that one pot, you definitely used it to make something milchik, and then somebody came along and started to heat up something fleishik within it. So that's a problem. But if it was more than 24 hours, whatever taste that it has that's imparted, it gives over a bad taste. And so before we kosher anything, we let it sit for 24 hours. Okay? And that needs to be taken into our consideration as we plan our day of cleaning, right? As we plan the day, we need to say, okay, these things can't be used. So that's the microwave. That is, let's say we want to kosher utensils. We've got silverware that we want to switch over so that can be used on Pesach. That's the countertops as well that Betzalel is going to come over and use his steamer on. Before you invite Betzalel over to steam your countertops, you need to make sure that the countertops have been, when we say not used, obviously you're going to use them, but you're not putting hot things on them for the previous 24 hours. You can put food down on it. You can put stuff down on it. But we're talking about putting hot stuff down on it, or hot chametz, certainly, right? Now, again, when we're talking about hot chametz, like when are you putting hot chametz? It's really, you got a pot of pasta and you put it in some of the water splashes out on the side. Otherwise, it's very hard for it really to become hot enough to transfer. But we're strict when it comes to these things. So the idea is it needs to sit for 24 hours. Before you kosher anything, it needs to sit for 24 hours. Okay? All good? So when it comes to the microwave, so it says here, you don't use it 24 hours, then you clean it for 5 minutes. Okay, clean it, I don't know if it's 5 minutes. If it's very dirty, clean it for 20 minutes. If it's not so dirty, clean it for a minute. And then you boil water in it for half an hour. Do not boil water in it for half an hour. Boil water in it for 7 minutes, or 8 minutes, and it should be okay. If you've got a glass, something that you put the food on, generally, like the turntable, right, the plate or whatever it is that's inside, many people do cover that up with saran wrap or plastic wrap or something, so as to not put them directly on top of that. But if it's koshered, it's koshered. Okay? Yeah? All good. Counters. The counters really goes down to what the counter is made out of. Okay, if it's some sort of like plastic like this, like what's the forget the actual term for it, but if it's like
Laminate.
a laminate, that's the word. If it's a laminate, you can't really kosher the laminate, and so and even trying to kosher it will damage it. So unfortunately, with laminate, you got to cover up. Okay, and you cover it up with aluminum foil. Unfortunately, it's a very wasteful hug, or something else, right? Something that's going to sufficiently cover it up. We get these things. We go to Pantry and we get these like I don't know, there's like kind of these plastic things that we use from year to year, although they generally don't always make it through the year. But it's more of like a thing that covers it up. If it's marble or granite or some other form of even a man-made form of them, then those certainly can be koshered. Just for clarity's sake, the Kosher Australia book says in the back which materials can be koshered. I'll just mention we see this a lot in terms of homes that are being built. A lot of people, especially high-end homes, are building with porcelain. They're building with porcelain countertops. Not recommended. It's not recommended. And it's so if people are asking the question, they're trying to build a home, they want to build a home, we don't recommend porcelain because it's hard to kosher it. But there's a lot of beautiful marbles and a lot of beautiful man-made marbles and other materials that can be used, and they can be koshered as well. So if you have, okay, let's start a talk. Just if you don't have the Bezalel's thing, or Bezalel's not talking to you and he's not going to come over to your house and kosher your desk, your bench tops for you. So what you can do is obviously the old school style of boiling water. Very, very careful. You boil water and then you pour. You can use it in an electric kettle as well, right? Once it's still boiling, so you want the water to be rolling, then you pour it out over so you clean it, let it sit for 24 hours, and then pour boiling water over all the surfaces, and that koshes it. Definitely, Bezalel and Betty's method of using that thing is safe and easier to do, but counters can be koshered. Okay, I know this is probably a review for everybody. Sinks, same thing. If it's a metal stainless steel sink, he says here, don't kosher it, but no, you should kosher it, right? You don't need to put a plastic bin inside it. You should. I think if you've got a metal sink, a stainless steel sink, then it should be kosher, just like you kosher the counters by pouring hot water over it. It's got to be rolling, boiling hot water. So it's not you boiled the water and then let it sit for 5 minutes and then you've used it. That would be good for maybe making tea, but not koshering your counters or your sink. That's if it's stainless steel. If it's another material, that's a different story, and then we have to talk. Okay, mixers here. He says, that's complicated, right? The issue is if it's metal, you can kosher it. If it's plastic and it's the plastic of the apparatus, you don't want to put that into boiling hot water, and so it's kind of harder to do it. A lot of people do have another mixer or something else that they can use on Pesach, and certainly in our affluent age, that would be recommended. Koshering dishes, again, people do. Sometimes they want to, kosher, take the silverware and take it from the regular year over to Pesach. That is fine to do, but also, you can go, like I said, if you can buy it from somewhere nice, then great, buy it from somewhere nice. But if not, you can get it from IKEA. It's pretty reasonable and affordable, and that's all good. Okay. Now, cars need to be cleaned, right? And not only do cars need to be cleaned, you also need to do a bedikat chametz there. Right. Certainly, if you're like me, you've got kids in primary school and you take them home from school every day, you got to check the car. That's for sure. And most people, they eat in their cars. What can we say? Some people eat more in their cars than they do in their kitchen. So definitely a car needs to be checked and cleaned, not kashered, right? No boiling hot water, unless you're cooking on, I don't know what you're doing, but you definitely need to clean out your car. It doesn't need to be taken, it certainly does not need to be taken to the car wash, right? We're not talking about dirt, we're talking about on the inside. So if you want to take it to the car wash and have them do the dirty work, then great, okay? Any questions on that? Or any questions in general? Now, he mentions here, okay, let me just read what he says here. If you know that being stricter than halacha requires, and you choose to be strict, you deserve a blessing. Okay, so there is space for people, you've been doing things since your grandmother used to do these things, and you went to her house, and she did these things, and this is how they kasher, and this is how your mother and your father kasher, and this is how you kasher, and this is how you clean for Pesach, and this is what you want to do, and that's Pesach for you, great. And that's so long as you know that what you're doing is strict. You know that what you're doing is a chumrah, okay? Right? Because it's, and that's fine, and it has its place. He says you deserve a blessing. He says, and if you accepted a stricture on yourself, and now that you want to stop, the way to do that is to do a hatara. It's like a vow. You've been doing a certain thing every year, and you're like, you know what? I'm not going to do this anymore. I don't want to be this strict anymore. I don't want to kasher and cover every single place in my kitchen with aluminum foil. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. It's bad for the environment, all that sort of stuff. I don't want to do it anymore. And even though that's how my parents did, I don't want to do it anymore. If you know that it's a stringency, you can annul a vow. You can talk to me. You can annul the vow according to Rav Aviner. But he says the following thing. If you thought that a particular act was the actual halacha, and now you realize that it is a stricture, you do not need hatara, right? Meaning, if you think that this is what one needs to do in it, that if you're not covering your entire kitchen with aluminum foil, then you're not keeping the halacha, then it's not a stringency, it's a mistake. And so then what he says is you don't actually have to annul that vow because it was a mistake in the first place, okay? So if you want to do things in a strict way, great. There's things that we do, that's just how we do them, fine, right? But you don't have to do them, okay? You don't have to do them. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is say, he says, you should not, however, force a stricture upon yourself, but rather accept it with love. You want to take on stringency, great, but only do it if it's going to enhance it and not if it's going to make you go crazy. Okay. Now he says here at the end that in light of all this, it shouldn't take you that long. I think if you're being reasonable, okay, I wouldn't recommend doing it all in one day, but you can spread it out over a little bit. But again, you don't need to vacuum every single room. You can vacuum the rooms, right? But certainly the rooms you're not putting chametz in. You don't need to go crazy. Be reasonable. Follow these things. The big things, obviously, kashering the kitchen, that takes the most time, but it should not take more than a day, right? And if it does, then you have to think about, okay, what am I doing here that is absolutely necessary? And what am I doing that I want to do, but it's not necessary? If you want to do it, great. But if you don't want to do it, that's not cleaning for Pesach. If it's not halacha, it's not cleaning for Pesach, right? So he says here at the end, okay? Where is it here? Okay, let's do the second to last paragraph. The essential point is the distinction between chametz, which is there as an obligation to clean with all the severity of the halacha, and dirt, which should obviously be removed, but not necessarily before Pesach. You can spread out the work of removing dirt over the whole year so that we and our families do not suffer before Pesach. I'm not advocating poor housekeeping. We should stand before chametz with awe and fear, but not all dirt is chametz. Do not treat chametz cavalierly, God forbid, but at the same time, not everything that is accepted as Pesach cleaning is directed at chametz. And I think that's the main point, right? That not everything we do is really what you need to do. If you want to do it, fantastic. But if it's not actually kashering, getting rid of chametz, cleaning out chametz, it doesn't need to be done now. And if that will somehow maybe reduce some of the stress, some of the tension that is around, cleaning up for Pesach, then great, beautiful. Now, I do have here things about food and medicine on Pesach. I'm not going to go through it at this very moment. I'd love to hear if anybody has any more questions or comments.
I've got a comment,
Yeah,
if it's all right.
sure.
Every year, my mother used to get up on a step ladder and she used to put a new coat of green calcimine, which is a plaster-based paint, all over the kitchen walls and ceiling.
Mm.
And when they finally came to sell the house, the painters spent so much time getting it off that they were paid by the hour, of course, and it cost a fortune to clean the green calcimine off before they could put waterproof paint on. So that was my mother's form of being strict.
Okay, there you go. So people, you're right, beautiful. I mean, and people add these different things that they do, and that was her stricture. You certainly don't need to paint the kitchen before Pesach, right? And right, people have the different things that they do, and we all know exactly what we mean by that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sonia. Any other questions
You're welcome.
before?
Rabbi Wurzberger told me one year that dust is not chametz, which is a very important
Right.
thing.
So what Rav Aviner says somewhere else in this document is, or dirt is not chametz, and children. It's the last one there. Children are not the korban Pesach, right? So
Yes.
they're not the Pesach sacrifice. Meaning, it's and this I think sometimes comes up in other areas as well, not just around Pesach. It's like we're so like trying to do all these different things and make it meaningful and all and keep the halacha, but we end up trampling on relationships and pushing our kids away and not giving them the focus, their attention that they need. So you're right. That's not, should people have clean homes? For sure, right? That's important. Our we don't say this, but cleanliness is next to godliness, right? It's not our thing. But no, people should have clean homes. But Pesach cleaning is not about that. It's about finding chametz that God told us to get rid of and getting rid of it.
I got a question to ask.
Sure.
And I'm sure that the whoever puts it together is not silly. Why can't they work out that the Pesach Seder's not falling on Shabbat? Because you have to prepare for Seder night, the second night, and evidently on Shabbat you can't do anything until Shabbat is over.
Well,
couldn't the rabbis or whoever?
Bezalel, yeah. So I hear your question. I'll say that first off, the calendar has been set for thousands of years, right? So the rabbis evidently did not think that it was such a big deal, right? And it can be a special thing. It obviously has its complexities. It's less complex, I think, than when you have it on a Motzi Shabbos, and then you have 3 days of Yontif. That's even more complicated. But to be honest, Betzalel, you're actually not. Let's say you've got a regular 2-day Yontif of Pesach. You cannot. Let's say the first day of Yontif is on Monday, and the second day is on Tuesday. You can't prepare for the Seder that's on Monday night on Monday, right?
But you can warm up the stuff. You can. Everything is prepared.
Once Yontif is out.
No, you can only. Yeah, Betty knows. Only once Yontif is out. So
not Shabbat
or Yontif.
Or Yontif.
No.
You cannot prepare from one day of Yom Tov to the other, right? So the issue is, if you're cleaning, sorry, not if you're cleaning, if you're preparing, making something for the Shabbos to be consumed on Shabbos, and there happens to be, a whole bunch of other things left over for Yontif, fine. But you're not allowed to prepare. A lot of people don't know that. Even if it's not Shabbos to Yontif, even if it's just Monday to Tuesday, you're not allowed to prepare on the first day of Yom Tov for the second day. And so even though this year actually the as opposed to last year, the Sedarim are going to come in a lot more reasonable time because the clocks change next Motzi Shabbos, which is crazy, right? Already next Saturday night, the 1st, I think, of April, we change the clocks. So they'll be starting at 7, 7:30, 8, as opposed to 8:39, right? That's a big difference. But even on the second day, you can't prepare from the first day to the second day. Any other questions? Ian?
No, but I say thank you.
Okay, but Ian, I saw him unmute there, or maybe Gail, I'm not sure who's there.
Yes. Just back to, you mentioned with the stainless steel sinks.
Yeah,
If you kasher them by pouring boiling water, did you say then you don't need to use those plastic bowls in them?
definitely do not. If
Ah,
you've got,
okay.
stainless steel, let it sit for 24 hours. That's the hard thing, right? That's the hard part of kashering because the sink is so central. And also hot food or hot things get in there. So don't use hot. Don't pour the pasta water. I use the pasta, but that's like the most kind of chametz liquid, very hot liquid that can be poured out. Don't pour that out in the sink for 24 hours. And clean it well and just kasher it with boiling water, and you don't need any of those things inside.
So if you use it within the 24 hours, but not with hot stuff, is
It's
that
fine.
okay?
Fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you can't not use, like if you are going to use hot stuff in it, then you just use the tubs. So you still
Then you can't kasher, right? Then you can't kasher it.
Yeah.
So if you can't kasher it, but you can. I mean, you'll work it out. You'll work it out.
Okay. And then that sort of drains then that that removable drain.
Yeah.
Take out. Is it better to get new ones? Or
You can. I think those things can also be kashered as well. You can pour boiling hot water over those things too. They're made out of stainless steel.
Okay. But they got sort of haven't they got rubber underneath here?
They have what underneath?
Rubber, I think they've got like a little rubber washer.
Yeah, I think rubber can be kashered. Certainly in that situation. I know a lot of people get a separate one. We have Pesach ones for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay. Next week we're gonna be continuing some with other areas of halacha around Pesach, but hopefully that's clear. Hopefully that is helpful and meaningful for everybody. I want to thank all the thousands of you who have come join me this evening, and it's good to see you all. And I look forward to continue to learn with everybody as we move forward.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank
Have
you
a good
very
evening,
much.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very
you.
much.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.